My background is, I was born and raised in Vancouver, but on my father's side, I am Lakota, North Dakota, and then they migrated up to Manitoba, so I'm actually Lakota and French on my dad's side. On my mom's side, it's Woodlands Cree, Scottish, and French. I'm a mother of 7 children. I have 3 grandchildren, and one that's due August 2nd, the 4th one. His name's Leo. So I want to share just a lot about my personal experience in regards to the work that I'm going to talk to you about. My personal experience actually is being like a past drug user, sex worker. I've dealt with many unhealthy domestic violent relationships, homelessness, child apprehension, HIV diagnosis, which was in 2000 for me. Also, I got pregnant in 2001, and I have a healthy little girl named Destiny from 2001, where I had the medications that she became, she was HIV negative, and she's graduating this Thursday. Also, after I gave birth to Destiny, I went on the old interferon and cured my Hep C back in 2003-4. And I've had recent stigma and discrimination in the healthcare system, where I almost died, about 2 years ago this July. So as a peer, I got to co-facilitate 3 out of 5 of our SHAWNA arts-based photo voice project. So it was on a sensitive topic around stigma and also the criminalization of HIV non-disclosure. So we had 5 of our groups, and what I got to bring there, I think, to help the 3 groups that I did facilitate is that I got to share my own personal experience of being with a partner. And this was about 12 years ago, where I didn't disclose my HIV status. I was in my addiction, and then I was outed by my daughter. And this individual said, "Oh, don't worry, I don't care about that." And then a few years ago, when I got into not using or drinking anymore, I didn't want this person in my life. And this person came up to me with a lab report from his doctor saying, "Look, I told my doctor about you, and now I'm going to get tested for HIV." So that was like, the fear got into me, and then I was stuck in that relationship. And it was so hard, and that went on for a couple of years. And so that I got to bring those, sharing all that with these groups, which the first group was our Positive Women Advisory Board. We did them first. And then also thanks to Patience Magugla for helping us to recruit the African Canadian Black Net for our second group. Our third group was an indigenous one, and thanks to Val we had to go to an existing group to actually recruit. So we got to, we had 8 women in our indigenous. And then thanks to YouthCo, we also have a group of youth that participated in this photo voice. And then the 5th one, my colleague, her name is Lulu, and she got to, because there's no existing groups in Metro Vancouver for trans, she did one-on-ones photo voice. So, and we made sure too that the groups were honored. Like specifically, I'm going to talk about the indigenous one. We made sure there was an elder who opened and closed it. We made sure we had traditional ceremonial food from Cedar Feast Catering. Oh, there's a shout out for them there. And always having the smudge, whether they needed it before the group, but also after the group. And the elder was there for 4 out of the 6 groups. We met once a week. So it was really powerful. It was when we actually had to do a PowerPoint in the beginning saying what the law was today, like the same 4-letter word came up in all the groups, and it was the word fear. That's what I seen in their collages that they made, and some of the pictures that they took, and also just the look on their faces, and really kind of not really their voice right away. It took a couple of weeks, but they also grew like more confident too, and not alone so much as, but yeah, I did, because with stigma for me, when I was diagnosed in 2000, I didn't actually come and go and look for help or support anything for 10 years. I internally stigmatized myself. It was a secret. It was just, no, not me, right? And, we got to do after the 5 groups were done, we did a photo exhibit last September with the 27 photos and the narrations from these women. And this is a booklet, Through Our Own Eyes, on disclosure, stigma, and pain. Originally, the pain part was going to be the word HIV, But, you know, that's where I said, I go, you know, it's for me and a lot of the women in the group, pain was like, from dealing with the stigma and the law today, was really what we needed to put on here versus just HIV, right? And also for these women, because they each got a booklet like this, for them to keep safe too, for it not to have HIV written all over it. And I just want to share, like, there's one lady in here, if you guys can see this. So I'm going to talk about this one person, and her name is Elle, because they use pseudonyms. Some of them did refuse to use a pseudonym. Some of them said, no, I want my name right on there. So this one here is from Elle with the plate and the spoon and that. And when she was diagnosed, she went to go live with her sister and her sister's husband. And from that, she was given a bowl, a plate, a fork, a knife, a spoon, and a cup. And she was not allowed to put it in the dishwasher. She had to wash it herself, bring it to her own bedroom. And she had to live like that. And I remember when her brother came to visit, he goes, why are your dishes down there by your bed all the time? And she's going, never mind. She didn't want to speak about it. That's how she was treated by her own family, right? And a lot of those stories are very similar. Like, anybody, you're welcome to look at these. I also want to mention that SHAWNA Voice has been going on for over, SHAWNA's been our project on our quantitative side has been going on for over 4 years. And we have 340 participants. I also want to mention also though that we do have like 30 participants that have passed on to the spirit world. And I always want to acknowledge them and remember them for their wisdom. And when we, on the quantitative side, asked the question around stigma, out of those 340, 97% have experienced stigma in their lifetime. But more importantly, we do follow-ups every 6 months with these women for over 4 years. And 90% are still facing stigma. And that's a fact today for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I work with a group of children, adolescent, young people living with HIV with an organization that is called African Shandiri. So what we do is we provide psychosocial support. We do peer-to-peer because we understand and we know that peer-to-peer relationship works better than, you know, these are adolescents and young people who are going through different kind of challenges. So when they talk to each other, they are better to understand each other and come up with solutions that they need in order for them to curb the challenges that they are going through. So this is the kind of work that I do on a daily basis. So I'm 20 years and plus 8. I know some people was like 20. So I'm 28 years old. Recently traditionally married. I was born with HIV and I'm currently living with HIV. I'm super proud of my status. I'm super empowered and I love being HIV positive. I don't know who doesn't love it, but I do love it. I enjoy myself. So I was married in February. I'm super happy and excited that my wedding is on the 3rd of August, this coming August. So I'm super excited right now. I'm someone who was also stigmatized when I was also growing up in terms of the services that I currently receive in the national system. But I love that Africaid came through for me. And I love my auntie, you can just wave, because she was she was there from when I was a baby, you know. The difference that we have seen with stigma and discrimination is that when you get to companies or organizations like Africaid, they offer love, you know. Love is something which goes beyond ARVs, which goes anything else that you might be going through. So each and every one, whether you are HIV negative or whether HIV positive, I believe that at some point you need love for you to go to the next level, for you to have someone to just listen to you, these experiences that you are having. So they were sort of like a listening ear for me. They brought me to be where I am today. You know, I was a beneficiary, but now I'm someone who's in the programs. I am the expert of, you know, how to provide services for other adolescents. So you actually see that this kind of support that we provide for people living with HIV, it's actually worth it, because since I was very young when I still joined Africaid, and they built me to be where I am today. So what I want to share with you is on a daily basis, children and adolescent young people, they go through stigma and discrimination at any level that you might think of, be it at school level, be it in the community, be it in the houses that they live as well, be it at health facilities. They face stigma one way or another. Let's say, for example, the families that they are coming from, like what she was also sharing to say, these adolescents, they are given their own blankets, they are given their own cups, they are treated differently from other children as well. They are treated as someone who is nothing really. I remember one adolescent that I was interacting with, they said we couldn't pay your school fees because you are already a grave that is waiting to just, happen. So they couldn't pay because they're saying we're investing in nothing. So you should just stay at home, do nothing. So this is the kind of experiences that we go through as young people living with HIV as we are growing up. So you can imagine what will be going through my mind, what are the emotions that I'll be going through, what about my self-esteem, what is happening to me. So this is the kind of experiences that they go through every day. When they go to the facility, there are those service providers that have those attitude to say you mustn't have these kind of services that you might need. So it's really something which is very real, which is currently happening, which we need to deal with. Because I believe that when someone is facing stigma and discrimination, there are certain limitations, be it in their lives, be it in the access to services that they need. Because I'm an adolescent girl and young woman, when I face stigma, which means my confidence is down. For example, I'm not able to do anything because I'll be feeling that I'm worthless at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, I will see myself as worthless. I will not be able to even look for something. I will not even go access some other services because I feel like I am nothing in the community. So in the community as well, they also face this stigma and discrimination because they know that someone is living with HIV. So they take you as someone who doesn't have a future, really. So this is what is happening back home. You might say, well, we are doing so much about stigma and discrimination, but when you go to the ground, when you are working with people on a daily basis, especially me, I work with children, adolescent, young people on a daily basis. When I sit down with them and get to hear their stories, that's when you can actually see that there's so much that is going on, so much that we really need to help these adolescents and young people. So no matter how much we want to say that we are doing so much, we need to interrogate our systems, we need to interrogate our interventions at the end of the day. Do we have tangible successes that we are saying we are doing? So it's something that we really need to think about and see, are we doing enough for these adolescents and young people? Are we doing enough for adolescent girls and young women? I think in a nutshell, that's what I can say for now, right?
That all sounds great to me. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Days after my birth was the one the Eagles watch over. I was gifted the name Nodiwenda, which means wolf eyes, from the Dene peoples, and I was just given the title of auntie from the Torres Strait Islanders, where I was visiting. I'm HIV positive, and I had no idea what I was going to say until I saw three amazing women walk into the room besides the other three amazing women I know were there, who I would like to say actually probably saved my life. The nurses from the downtown east side, so thank you so much. They're going to make me cry. I work in research. I'm also a frontline warrior in the downtown east side as a peer navigator. And I hear so many stories of stigma and discrimination, but I think the biggest discriminator that we have is Canada itself. And our non-disclosure law of HIV, where we can be charged as a registered sexual offender. And I mean, we are the second, what am I trying to say, Angela?
Most aggressive.
Yes, most aggressive in the world for prosecuting for non-disclosure. That doesn't even mean transmission of HIV. I just want to carry a few stories that I carry about women. One Indigenous woman that I know, she was date raped. And she went to a doctor, and this is about 4 years ago, here in British Columbia, right here in Vancouver, and he did all the tests, he didn't give her much of anything and sent her on her way. A couple months later, she broke out in a rash from head to toe. She went to St. Paul's Hospital because she never had a rash before in her life. And they asked her all the right questions. You know, have you changed your laundry detergent? Have you taken any medication, different medications? Any foods? Yeah, anyone else's clothes? They went through the list. And finally, in exasperation, the intern said, has anything changed in your life? And she hung her head and she says, well, I was date raped a while ago. And she says, can I get a rash from a sexual encounter? And he said no, not realizing that she could from HIV. So he gave her some medication, gave her some cream, and sent her on her way and said, follow up with your doctor. So after a while, she went back to this doctor that she had gone to, and he walked into the room and he looked at her, and he took her file and he threw it on the table and said, so, you're HIV positive. How many people did you infect? 1 dozen? 2 dozen? More? He says, you think about that. And he walked out and left her sitting there. This is 4 years ago here in BC, not far from here. And when we have healthcare professionals, I mean, we have awesome ones and we have ones that are very not educated. I used to be an intravenous drug user, and everyone used to say, how often do you abuse drugs? We need to be kinder in our words. I turn around and say, I never abused drugs 1 day in my life. I used them to the best of my ability every day. But yet, if I go to St. Paul's Hospital, and I've been to the emergency last year, and I work with the youth. I love working with the youth. And I've been at a youth camp, and we have been pulling drums, and I got a big infection in my finger because it's alkyd and the water was contaminated. And I was on my way to Amsterdam that night, at midnight flight, to speak at the World AIDS Conference. So I go into St. Paul's and I said, all I need is a prescription for an infection, because there was no clinics open. And they said, well, no, you need an intravenous. And I said, oh, okay, right? Because I really believe healthcare professionals. So she comes to go put it in my hand. And I go, excuse me, please don't put it in my hand. It really hurts, and my veins are deep and feathery, and it won't work. If it goes in, it won't even last for 2 minutes. And she says, well, that's where you need to put it. And I said, well, please don't. And I said, I would really like it here, because this is where all my blood work is taken, and I've had other intravenous drips for infections. And she says, we don't. She said, I'm putting something in, I'm not taking it out. So she went up here. So I don't like needles anymore. I'll get tons of tattoos, but my recovery is I don't like needles anymore. So I turn my head, and she goes, well, I guess you felt that, didn't you? And I look over, and my vein is blown, and there's blood, and it's already bruised. And she goes, I'm done with you. And she walked away. I'm really still excited because I'm going to Amsterdam. I told the doctor, you know, I'm going to Amsterdam tonight. You know, I need to get out of here. And another nurse comes over, and she goes, so where do you want it? And I went, right here would be really nice. And she says, you know you have to keep your arm out? And I said, yeah, I know that. So she puts it in, and she goes, so what's the problem? And I go, what do you mean, what's the problem? I don't have a problem. So I try to be very kind. And she walks away. And the doctor comes over, and he looks at me, and he says, well, we don't have the results from your infection, but it looks pretty bad. So you're going to have to come back tomorrow at this time and get another intravenous. And I said, I can't. I'm flying out to Amsterdam tonight. And he rolled his eyes and went, yeah, right. And he says, I need you back here tomorrow. And he walks away. So when I said, can I please talk to him? He comes back, and I said, look, can I just get a prescription? He says, nope, you're going to be back here tomorrow. You go up to OPAC, which is outpatients therapy. And then he goes, well, if you're really going to Amsterdam, you can just go, and you can get your intravenous over there. And I looked at him, and I said, okay, can you give me the prescription of what you're giving me? I'm going to miss it by many hours because my flight is this long. And I said, and how do you expect me to keep my arm straight like this? Because he refused to take it out of my arm. I said, how do you expect me to keep my arm this straight when I'm in economy, and there's people going to be climbing over me, or I'm going to be climbing over them to go to the washroom, and I can't bend my arm? I said, how do you expect me to do this? And can you tell me what hospital I go to? Like, can you translate it? And he looked at me and goes, so you're really going to Amsterdam? And I said, I've been telling you this like for 3 hours. And in my head, I didn't say it out loud. And I said, yes, I'm really going. I'm speaking at the World AIDS Conference. And he goes, but you're really going? And I said, yes. He goes, but you're red flagged as a drug addict. I haven't put a needle in my arm for 11 years. Yet I still battle that stigma every time I go to that hospital. And they've told me that red flag will never come off. So why would I access care? Why would that girl that the doctor said how many people did you infect, why would she access HIV care? She was lucky enough to be connected to an ASO, and I'm a strong person. I'm an advocate. I work to decriminalize, and I'm strong. And yet that doctor pushed me down farther than I could go. I've had doctors whisper in the room when I was getting colonoscopy, we'll get intimate here, where I'm lying there, my thumb is showing to the world behind me, and they whisper, and this is 2 years ago, he whispers to his assistants, we have to use universal precautions, she's HIV positive. And I go, I know I'm HIV positive, you don't have to whisper, you can say it out loud. But why are we still facing discrimination and stigma in Canada? And one of the ones that I really want changed is we hear mother-to-child transmission. So why are we stigmatizing the mother? You don't say to me, man-to-woman transmission. So why are we stigmatizing that mother who has enough on her plate already? She's pregnant, she's HIV positive, and who else knows what else she's carrying? Let's give her that blanket of comfort and say in vitro infection or vertical. We don't have to say mother-to-child transmission. Another one that is one of my biggest peeves, and I apologize because this is going to be from somebody's email that I saw today, is the word intervention. And when I hear the word intervention, it's top down. It isn't working with the people that need it. And when we say intervention, intervention is like residential school, where Canada intervened with our education, with our culture and our traditions. And instead of saying interventions, because it's like you're interfering in our lives, why don't we say positive action and work together? And you can be stigma slayers by starting this. And I probably used up my 5 minutes.
But all 3 minutes.
It's a photo, it's our women who live with drug addiction and women who use drugs. I'm a specialist of advocacy, and my goal is mobilization and advocacy rights these women. And next. When I prepare this presentation, I asked for my friends in Facebook what is stigmatizing beliefs about LGBT women, because it's my own experience, and about women who live with drug addiction and women who use drug, they know. And my friends writes for me only 14 beliefs, and these 6 highlight of this is better a son drug addict than a lesbian daughter. Lesbianism is worse than drinking. It's about Ukraine. No? You will marry and everything will be normal. It's about lesbian. Women addicted to drugs should not have children. A woman who lives with drug addiction or women who use drug will never be a full member of society. Why spend money on this? It's about women who use drug or women who live with drug addiction. Let them die, only do not hurt children. Next. And I will speak about both, about stigma and discrimination by LGBT women and by women who live with drug addiction and use drug. If we tell about women who use drug, we now have tougher punishment. Last month there was very important change in legislation that wasn't the situation for women who use drugs in Ukraine. In the last days of this term, President Peter Poroshenko signed a law that raised fines for possession of drugs for one's own use by 30 times. The law will come into force in 2020. We have only half of years for to do advocacy campaign. Next. If we talk about level of stigma in Ukraine, it's stigma in society, stigma in mass media, the health services, state and social services, police, and within the drug community. And next. Stigma and discrimination in society. Now in Ukraine we have activation of ultra-right and religious movement, and this about formation of image of the ideal family and the place of women in society in Ukraine. It's about women is wife, women is mother, a woman should always obey a man, a woman who does not meet the ideal of the Ukrainian woman as mother, as a wife, if the woman don't have a man, it's woman should be punished, violence can be applied to her. It is her interest, because it is her interest. And stigma and discrimination in health services. Most healthcare professionals, including gynecologists, believe that lesbianism is not serious or is a mental disorder. Women living with drug addiction or women who use drugs cannot be covered and pose threat for the doctor. For example, can pass infection of HIV, hepatitis, tuberculosis. These women may be denied medical services based on their HIV status, hepatitis or drug addiction alone. Disclosure of medical private information of HIV status or drug use. Lesbians should not have access to reproductive technologies because it is believed that in same-sex families, children will grow up psychologically inferior. The best solution offered for a pregnant woman who use drugs is abortion. Opioid substitution therapy is not treatment, but waste money for a legal drug. And now we have process transition to state state financial, and this problem is very, very hard now. Stigma and discrimination in state services. From the perspective of state police, the best decision for children of women who use drugs is to remove the child from the family and place him or her in a social shelter. There is an article in the Family Code of Ukraine according to which a woman can be deprived of parental rights if she found to be a drug user. Social benefits for women who use drugs is a bad idea because she will spend it on drugs. Women who use drugs should be handled by the police, not social services. If the police find out that a woman lives with drug addiction or uses drug, they will not accept her claims about a crime against her. For example, about theft of her biologic, physical violence or rape, and will not investigate the crime. A woman who uses drug does not deserve a good treatment. It is permissible to use violence, use derogatory derogatory terms, and insult her. And next. And the stigma within the drug community. Within the community of people who use drug, a woman has low status. There are community rules in which a woman injects drugs only after a man, and only the amount that a man leaves for her. A high status man, though himself a drug user, must have a clean. Woman who does not use drugs. It's don't right. Every woman use drugs, but it's
Double standard.
double standard. Yeah. Woman from the community that does not have a male partner is sexually available, and violence against women within the community is acceptable and normal. It's all. I'm sorry.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
3 years from now.
We will all be older.
Be older. But, I mean, I'd like to talk about change, of course, in regards to the law, you know, of HIV non-disclosure. After working with like my peers and hearing their stories of stigma, and also even some of them that didn't even know about the law, and you know, possibly being like, you know, labeled like a pedophile on the sexual registry if your partner decides to call the police on you. Like, that's just the sickest thing I could ever think of could happen to women. You know, when this law was made probably for somebody that's going out there purposely to infect people, right? That's where the law is really made for, but not to keep you safe. And around stigma, what I want to see is change, and around that I would see, like, we really need funding again for HIV women's organizations. Big time out here. Like, we lost all that funding for Positive Women's Network. And after doing those photo voice groups too, when we did evaluations with the women, what they wanted to leave there is that we need this group weekly. We need to have something like this where everybody was feeling a part of, not alone, you know, taking the stigma down, where they could go to a safe place. And from those groups, a couple of those groups too, there's people working now as peers in the community. You know, their health outcomes are getting better too, just from that little 6 weeks. So imagine something that's going on weekly for women to be able to go to. And especially around stigma and just re-educating. Like, I know where I was stuck for 10 years with my internal stigma because I didn't reach out until I found out I was not alone, right? I started volunteering at AIDS Vancouver in the grocery, and wow, you know? And then, you know, there's a job posting for a PRA, and this was like 7 years ago, and I was like, okay, I could do this. And being able to be that peer for the other peer and stuff really helped me immensely, like to be where I'm actually talking up here today, and I've done other speaks and stuff in regards to HIV. Somebody would have told me, like, you know, 10 years ago, I would have said, no way, right? I would never do that, right? No way. And I want to kind of talk about Val, what she talked about the hospital. Like, it was a violent attack by my partner to my breast, and this was just under 2 years ago. And I went to the hospital, and I was so sick, and I had my daughter with me, and I was literally in such a vulnerable state. I really didn't have my voice that I have today, and I was treated so badly. The doctor came and he looked at my breast, and I said, I'm in a lot of pain, so please don't touch it. He goes, I don't want to touch that, ew. Right? He didn't assess me. He didn't give me any antibiotics. He didn't call the infectious disease specialist. he goes, here's some morphine for you, and hooked me up to the IV, right? Because what my red flag is, like Val said, right? Past drug user. I overdosed 19 times at St. Paul's Hospital, but that was 20 years before. So here I am getting re-stigmatized, and that really, and never mind, okay, so I also work for the same organization, right? Under the Providence Healthcare, and I'm getting treated like this, right? And is it because I'm indigenous? Is it because I was a drug user? Is it because I'm HIV positive, right? And it was so hurtful. Anyhow, he sent me home with a little envelope. Here's a bunch of morphine, come back tomorrow morning, right? I had to go into surgery the next morning because the infection spread so much. And I kept telling my story how I was assaulted by my partner. Not one person in that hospital in my 12-day stay talked to me about the violence. Not one. And I was treated so poorly, like the nurses and stuff around getting needles in and stuff and everything. It was disgusting. And thanks to like one of my people I work with, I put a complaint in. So that complaint went nowhere. Everything was contradicted, right, from what I said happened to me, and it disgusted me. I got sick again earlier this January, and it took so much of me to go, because I live literally across the street, and it's like I was sick and I needed to go to the hospital, but I was terrified to go in there, and I had such an anxiety attack when I went in there, and the actual director of emergency took care of me, so I think I have a new red flag on my file now. You know, don't mess with this one, right? You know, but really, look at the lengths I had to go to, right? But I also got to do speaks with healthcare providers in regards to my experience, and I showed pictures of what happened to my breast, and it was very obvious that I needed help that night I went there, right, to help prevent what went on. So I mean, in this next 3 years, I want to keep sharing with healthcare providers, number one. Because how can you stigmatize, and when they actually found out I worked for Providence Healthcare, because I had to tell that to the third nurse that was trying to put an IV in. Oh, I'm not sure if I can. The other two couldn't. And I said I shouldn't have to use this card, but I've been working for Providence Healthcare for 3 years. Boom. And like that. You know, that's just under 2 years ago. And it's disgusting, and it shouldn't be that way anymore. So I heard so many of peers sharing stories, and some won't even go to certain hospitals anymore, right? Forget it, you know? I think I went to a clinic for a cold 4 years ago, and the doctor came in and goes, do you know you're HIV positive? Yeah, buddy, like about since 2000, okay? Really. I mean, we need change. I think education for sure, but we need, number one, I really want to talk about women and women being able to have a place to go to every week. Like there should be a Dr. Peggy Center out here too, specifically for women, not just Dr. Peters. I love him and I love everything that stands for it. But they only have like 13 women out of 400 members. So there needs to be a lot of change in regards to getting us safe, protected, and also empowered, which will bring the empowerment, which will bring that safety too. Thank you.
So my desire for me really is to move these conversations that we've been having here beyond these rooms, beyond this conference. Because I think a lot of times we are having so much conferences, so much meetings, so much workshops, and we've been talking about these issues over and over and over again. I think the issue of stigma and discrimination is started way back, and we've been talking about the same issues again. And we love to talk about these, discussions at this kind of levels, these conferences, these meetings. But what I would really love to see is what are we doing on the ground that we can come back in the next 3 years and say we have this that we've done. Whether you are someone who is into programming, who is into, you are a donor, you are what, I just need you guys to, at the end of the day, when we come back here, all these stories that we've been hearing from us, they would have changed. That's the change that I want to see. When we talk about these issues, we just don't go and sit down. I want the action part. What are we going to do after hearing these kind of stories? We have seen that there's a huge gap that is actually there. So the question still remains, when we come back here next time, after 3 years, I would really love to hear a change of story. I would really love to see the impact that we've made on the ground, because yes, we might talk about this here, but the actual fact is these things are happening on the ground. So we need to make sure that at the end of the day, there's something that is happening there. We need to hold whoever is supposed to be giving these services accountable for whatever they should be giving us. You know, we need to discuss it at a community level, at our national levels, anywhere where we are, where the people are. That's my desire really. And I don't want to see an issue whereby when we come back to the next conference on another topic, this one will have completely forgotten about it, because that's our tendency. Next time is sexual reproductive health, next time is HIV, next time is, we don't do follow up to what we've started so far. So I would love to see some kind of follow up to this kind of meeting that we've had. What have we done? What has changed really? I know there would have been something new, something sexy that would be going on in that way, but we need to make a follow up to say what have we done. That's my plea. And also we need to increase on education. We need to increase on capacity building, especially in the community, whether be it the healthcare workers, whether be it service providers. We need to do something about it. Also, funding. Funding is not reaching to the community that is on the ground. Because a lot of donors, a lot of the people who have got the money, they would say, they are not capacitated enough, they will not be able to handle the money or something like that. But the actual fact is we are the ones who are doing the work. Sometimes I might actually have to take out my $2 to just go and visit someone. I'm funding it out of my own pocket because I have the passion to see someone. I have to go and talk to someone, you see. So the actual work is actually happening there. But the fact that there is no one who's able to help us to document the actual stories that are happening, the actual impact that is currently happening, we are taken as, we are not doing anything. Because I think donors or people who've got the money, they love these statistics, they love these graphs, but in the actual fact, behind those statistics, behind those numbers that you'll be projecting, there are actual people who have benefited, who went through the whole journey to be where they are. So I would love to see a change of story in the next, be it whether any conference, not just Women Deliver, any conference that you might go to. Let's try to change. Let's see the impact that we want to see, not just talking about statistics, data. It's time to change. It's time to go back to the drawing board to see what are we doing. The positive actions that we've been talking about. Just like what you said, it's not about interventions. I love that. Thank you very much for that one. I love it. Positive actions. We need positive actions.
Yes, each and every one of you here is a teacher. And as a teacher, you also need to learn. And as learners, we need to teach. So keep that full circle going because you're both teachers and learners. And I'm going to go back, education. I go into the universities and I teach medical students. I'm a guest lecturer. And we all have that responsibility to educate, especially our youth that are coming up because it's their future. And I'll take words from my granddaughter who, when she was in kindergarten, we had done the Missing and Murdered Women's March, and she wanted to go to kindergarten the next day and sing the Woman's Warrior song. And she was proudly wearing her AIDS ribbon and her Missing and Murdered Women's ribbon. And one of her fellow students said, "What are those ribbons for?" And she stood up there at 5.5 years old and said, "Well, this one is for HIV, and my grandmother has it. And you can't get it from her, so get with the program." Mind you, I was called back to the school the next day to explain, but that's okay. She's now 9 years old. And she stood up and she drummed in front of the high school and her school. And she turned to me and she says, "Grandma, if you drum, they will come. If I sing, they will listen." And I think that is what we have to do. We have to sing out what we need to do. And I know Flo and I are in a video that's coming up called Healing Inner Voices. We've been working on this project for I don't know how long, and somebody said, "Val, don't you get it? Healing Inner Voices." I'm going, yeah, it's our video, it's, we're on the land, we're drumming, and it's all about stigma and self-stigma, right? And what we carry. And finally they said, Val, don't you get it? Healing inner voices, HIV. So we can do it with many, many different ways of just getting out there and making change. And the only thing I'd like to say is if you see a woman or a child struggling with HIV, wrap them in a blanket. And that blanket could be words, it could be an actual blanket, or a hug. But words can heal. And we've got to stop the words that hurt. So I think that's what I'll like to.
In order to work with community of women who use drugs, action is needed to ensure safely. Women should receive support from social services and the police without fear for their lives, health and health of their children. The community should become visible. It's very important. And while the LGBT community of women in Ukraine is quite visible and strong enough to fight for their own righs, the community of women who using drug or who live with drug addiction is invisible and very closed. Education program for professionals and opinions leaders to change the situation with discrimination in the field of law and the position of public services. Leadership program for community leaders of women living with drug addiction and women who use drugs. Intervention to work with the phenomenon of self-stigma. Advocacy for gender-sensitive services for women who face multiple discrimination at all levels. And it's my personal opinion, the movement for equal rights of women who use drugs is impossible without the support, the leadership community of women. My goal now is to make the community of women who use drugs and women who live with drug addiction, that these women stay visible in the women's rights and leadership sectors in Ukraine, to inform the Human Rights Organization of Ukraine about the futures and needs of women living with drug addiction and women who use drugs, to connect them to the process of empowerment. And я прошу вас сейчас помочь. Есть, я переведу это. У меня есть любимое выражение.
I have a favorite saying.
Это очень сильно про меня и про других женщин, которым приходится открываться.
She said it's a lot about me and also about women who have to disclose something or open up.
Да. По миру лучше идти с открытым забралом. Не знаю, что это забрало, но это шлем.
Okay. So the saying says that it's the best to walk in the world with an open helmet, with an open
Mind.
with a no, not mine. Sorry.
У рыцаря шлем, у шлема языка.
Yeah, so the visor. Thank you.
Okay.
No, the visor.
Ты все время получаешь по морде?
You're constantly getting pretty much punched in the face,
Но ты, по крайней мере, знаешь, как пахнет цветы.
but at least you know how the flowers smell.